so we will start with Todd Stevens. Please take the mic and please share with us your vision. Introduce yourself and share your vision. You have 2 minutes. And then pass the mic to Caprice and then down the road.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Stevens, and before I begin speaking, I just want to introduce my wife, Rachel, my daughter, Chloe, our 6-month-old child. She's sitting right there in the 3rd row. And if you want to talk with us at the end, more than happy to after this gathering. Well, my name is Todd. My story kind of begins more than 20 years ago when I was teaching public school. I was working full-time for part-time pay, and I found myself living in a car because I couldn't make ends meet. Life wasn't good back then, so I decided to move to here in New York City to transform my life. And then, along the way, I found a love for real estate, and just like everybody in this room, I found a love for Harlem. I found a love for Harlem. And, well, no matter how many homes I sold, or homes I rented, or people I met, I woke up every day wanting to change things, wanting to reshape Harlem in the best way I could. I thought to myself to volunteer with the NYPD for a couple of years, which I would have done for 20 years. I wouldn't be here tonight otherwise, thank you. But I found loopholes and deficiencies in the NYPD that I couldn't change. So I got more involved with community events and community efforts in relation to parks and our community fabric. But regardless, every day where I wake up, there's children in our community who cannot select the school of their choice. There are people in our community who can't get back on their feet because they might not have the skill that they need to achieve that next job or build that business directly here in Harlem so they can stay in Harlem. I hope at the end of this evening, you'll find yourself selecting me as your next city councilman and vote for me on February 14th. Thank you.
Let me just announce for everyone, this event is being streamed. So not only are people here, but thousands of others are going to be listening and looking at what you say. Silicon Harlem is doing the streaming for us. We forgot to mention that.
Hi, my name is Caprice Alves. I actually live on this block in Harlem. I'm an adjunct professor at several different colleges, 17 throughout the 14 years that I've been a professor. Community advocate. I have a doctorate in executive leadership and social justice. My community advocacy and personal experiences led me to a passion and focus on criminal justice reform and to eradicate the injustices that people are facing throughout New York. I have a particular passion for this area being that I'm from Harlem and I love Harlem. So my vision for Harlem is to ensure that people are empowered, collaborative communities, and to stop injustices throughout. So that's my vision for Harlem. Collaborative communities and empowered residents and home ownership and things like that, just empowering the residents of Harlem. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marvin Holland. I've been married for 35 years, have 3 children, and I've been a transit worker for the last 25 years. Over the last 5 years, I've been the political director of the Transport Workers Union. And in that role, I've moved a lot of legislation, even in the dysfunctional place that Albany can be sometimes. I built a lot of coalitions. So what I want to do now is bring those skills here to Harlem and the leadership I've developed. I've lived in Harlem about 5 years now. When I moved to Harlem, me and my wife were in a pretty dark space. And thanks to the community of Harlem, we were able to get over some very difficult times. Going forward in Harlem, I see Harlem as a very split community politically. The East Side, the West Side, Central, it's not always connected. And one of the things I think I can do is help connect all of these parts of Harlem and kind of get people on the same page politically. So thank you again, and I look forward to having the debate tonight with the candidates, and thanks again for inviting me to organize the event. Thank you.
Good evening. State Senator Bill Perkins and former member of the New York City Council. After serving for a while in the state Senate, I've decided that I believe I can do a lot better for you if I return to the city council. During that period of time when I was in the city council, I was able to pass very significant legislation and be very active in very important issues concerning our community. You know, the legislation ranged from something as icky as fighting rat epidemic that was plaguing our communities, something that a lot of people would turn away from because it's not the kind of sexy issue that people believe politicians should be having to address, but we addressed it and we made it into an important problem for our neighborhoods because of the kind of disease and other kind of problems that they plague our communities with, especially for our children. I also had the privilege of being able to create legislation that provided for a living wage as a state senator. Anybody like the idea of a living wage? Raise your hand. Okay, that's a bread and butter issue. I'm not going to be too long-winded, but some of you may also remember the problems that Donald Trump brought to our community in the case of the Central Park Five. Those young people were my neighbor's children. They were demonized for a crime that they did not commit in terms of raping somebody in Central Park. We stood by them. We stood by them when all the media and even some of my colleagues in government wondered why. And we stood by them because we knew they were innocent. And we stood by them because we knew that they were a part of a rigged kind of racist attack because the victim happened to be, unfortunately, a white woman in Central Park. So I'm here to continue to represent this community now in the capacity as I have in the past as a member of the City Council. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I know after a long day, many of us are tired from working from 9 to 9. I spent most of my time in Harlem working from 9 to 9. I'm Athena Moore, and I am a candidate for New York City Council. But I want to tell you a little bit about my journey. My journey is one of service. I've spent almost 20 years of my life serving at the city, the state, and the federal level. I've traveled to 11 cities advocating. I have a master's degree in public policy. I'm a first-generation everything. I grew up in public housing in New York City. I've served over 3,000 constituents in Harlem. I have delivered $27 million through my office at the Manhattan Borough President's Office, where I serve as the director of a new historic storefront on 125th Street. I am here because I want to serve you and be the best representative that I can be. I also know that you've heard about all of the challenges to many of our candidacies in the petition process. I'm not here as a career politician. I'm not here to retire and have a good pension. I'm here because I want to serve and give back to the community that has helped to pour into me all of who I am. I want to tell you that I believe in having every voice counted. I want to make sure that the voices of the disenfranchised, the most vulnerable, and the most needy in our community are heard right alongside with all of those new voices that are coming in to build and grow. My vision is for a Harlem that is rising against inequality, rising against homelessness, rising against business development that needs to happen and reflect the communities that have long been here. I stand on the shoulders of those before me, and my candidacy will go forward promoting the sense that we are one and we are more alike than we are different.
Thank you. We would appreciate it if you would stick to the time constraints. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Cooper, and I'm running to be your next city council person for District 9. I come from very humble beginnings. At 12 years old, my father woke me up in the middle of the night. It was the start of a civil war in Liberia. He packed my mother, 2 sisters, and I, and sent us to Sierra Leone. When violence threatened us there, We then fled to the US. Lived in public housing. I didn't get a chance to see my father until I was 22. But I'm more than just that story. I'm also the former vice chair of Community Board 9. I'm also a past teacher with New York City Department of Education. I'm also a past auxiliary Coast Guard officer. I'm also a past officer with the 26th Precinct Auxiliary Unit. I'm also a past chair of the Fred Sam Democratic Club. I live in Harlem. I love Harlem. All these things I do because this is my community. One of the great things about Harlem is that Harlem accepts everyone for who you are. One of the things I'm looking to bring is I'm looking to bring all of our skill sets we have here in Harlem to take Harlem to the next level. So today I'm asking you all for your support and for your prayers to make Harlem better. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Larry Scott Blackman, and I'm a candidate for City Council. Now, I know that there are a number of debates, and you're going to hear some stump speeches, but I'm going to tailor this for this neighborhood. I was born and raised in Drew Hamilton Houses, which is just up Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, right off of Frederick Douglass. I went to school here in Harlem. I left to go to SUNY New Paltz, and when I came back, my first studio apartment was right here at 116 West 131st Street. I understand the issues of this community. I never left. In fact, I started working and hitting the ground running. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the accomplishments in this area that I've worked to achieve throughout my 20 years in government. Not taking credit for anyone else's allotments, but the work that I've done. Working with Beverly Smith, we worked to secure capital funding for Courtney Callender Playground right off of Fifth Avenue. Working with my pastor, Reverend Henry A. Beelan at Bethel AME Church, every year we host a wonderful back-to-school celebration where we've provided hundreds of backpacks for kids in this community, free of charge. I am pleased, and I know last night, unfortunately, my little brother is gravely ill, and I received a call and I had to leave town to go see him. And I know there was a question about support versus endorsement, so I'm going to clear that up right now. I have the endorsement of the pastor of this church, the Reverend James A. Kilgore. Thank you, sir. I have the endorsement of former councilmember Inez Dickens, the endorsement of the Frederick E. Samuel Democratic Club, where my campaign is headquartered, and former Assemblymember Keith L.T. Wright. My vision for Harlem is one that is building on what we've already accomplished. If you remember the Majesters, Strayhorn's Barbershop, those small businesses that brought character to Harlem, then you support my candidacy because that's what we're going to develop. We're going to build on the past. We're going to continue to build a better Harlem. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. First, I would like to thank you all for coming out here and to hear some great people talk about their ideas and their visions for this district. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Donald Fields. I'm a young person. I'm only 25 years of age, but I lived in this community, still live in this community. I used to live on 127th Street, not that far from here, in a group home that used to be situated there that is no longer. So I understand the displacement that some people might feel. I understand that some people might feel like this district no longer represents them or no longer has their best interests at heart. And what I am here to do is to govern in a district together. It's about time that we start governing together, hearing the voices of the residents of this district and then putting it within our policy slate and making sure that we work for you. At the end of the day, no matter how eloquent we might speak or what ideas we might pontificate, at the end of the day, it's about who do you want working for you, put in their efforts, their hard work, their sweat, their tears to making sure that not only do you have a place in Harlem, but that you stay in Harlem and that you do not get pushed out. I have worked not only with members of the city council who some has endorsed my campaign. I have gotten pieces of legislation for young people that have been in foster care, that has been displaced, that has galloped between systems. I have fought for Pratt Area Community Council, which their goal is to keep people and families in their housing in the event that a landlord tries to evict them. They provide legal assistance so that they can remain in their homes. I help start advocacy organizations that have put young people in school and have been put in the New York State budget for $2.5 million. I'm a young person, but I haven't gotten things accomplished in this district, in this city, and that is my goal. My goal is to have a Harlem that is representative of all, inclusive. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Troy Outlaw. I am a son of Harlem. I was born in Harlem Hospital in 1984. So I understand where this community was and where it's going. And so my vision for this community, this is a very unique, special community. We have churches, we have property owners, we have NYCHAs, we have affordable housing residents. And I want to bring together all of those people so that we can all work together and worship together in one beautiful community. And so my vision for this community is one of prosperity, one of coming together and doing the work that needs to be done for this community. I am a former staffer to the former Councilwoman Inez Dickens. For the past 5 years, I have worked in this community. For the past 12 years, I have worked for the New York City Council. So I understand what it takes and what needs to be done to get the job done for this community. So I ask that you look at me, think of me when you go in the voting booth on February 14th, and just know that I have Harlem's best interests at heart when I go to work and work on these issues for the New York City Council. Thank you for having me tonight.
Good evening, my name is Cordell Clear. I'm a Harlem resident. I am a former staffer, chief of staff to Senator Bill Perkins, both as senator and as city councilman. I started my activism more than 25 years ago as a parent in the community trying to raise a family, as someone in the community who was unhappy with the conditions that we were living under. Due to the conditions in my own apartment, my family became affected by lead poisoning, which was when I started a citywide coalition to address the matter, not just in my neighborhood, but every neighborhood. And though it was too late to do anything about what had happened to my family, I was able to successfully work with people from all over New York City in healthcare, elected officials, legal, housing, and other advocates, environmental advocates. We ACT, I see they're here tonight. We go back a long way with that fight. And after 12 years of struggle, we were able to pass historic legislation, which came through the office of then Councilman Bill Perkins, and it is the most comprehensive lead poisoning prevention legislation in the country today, and it has saved thousands of children in New York City. So I'm very proud of that work. I want to continue that kind of work for people in our community. I was here when times were not very good in Harlem, and many of the faces I'm looking at tonight were the ones who stood on these very blocks and in these very buildings and protected ourselves, tenant patrols. We kept the drug dealers out. We lobbied our legislators to give us better living conditions. And because of that, today we have a better Harlem where everybody wants to be here. My vision for Harlem is that those who stayed and fought, those who stayed and suffered, are able to remain in this community, are able to continue to live here with affordable rents, are able to continue to be here and afford to open new businesses. Thank you. My time is up. I'm going to respect the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to start with our first round of our substantive questions. And the moderator presenting the question will be Ms. Anona Joseph of she's the secretary of the West 131st Street Block Association. Thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see all of you here, and I'm so grateful that all the candidates were able to make it today. And I swore I wasn't going to make that mistake. Councilman Gidanis Rodriguez nixed a rezoning proposal for Inwood around the affordability of the proposed units and the added density to the neighborhood. Councilman Van Brama blocked a rezoning proposal for Sunnyside due to the height of the proposed project, the added density, and the need for related infrastructure improvements. How would you vote on the upzoning request for the 130th, 131st Street and Lenox Avenue project called the Robeson, which is currently going through the ULURP process from R72 to R8A? Knowing that a significant group of the community is opposed to this upzoning request for the same reasons: height, added density, and I stress this, the lack of affordability for long-term, low, moderate income Harlem residents, increased parking, and general congestion. And any of you can begin to respond to that. Well, we would like to hear from all of you.
So, affordability begins the question for me. Very often in city government, affordability is not defined by what's in your pocket, but by what's in somebody else's imagination. And very often from that point of view, the housing that we wind up with is not available to the people that we expect it to be for. We have to define affordability first and foremost in terms of what's available in the pockets of the people for whom you attend, or at least you claim you want to provide the housing for. So we will make sure that happens from the perspective of the City Council. And you know, Harlem has been a very treasured community because of the fact that some of the...
I'm sorry, Senator, but everyone has 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
In conclusion, we have to make sure that contextual type height arrangements are done consistent with the historic view, the historic vision that Harlem has always had.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but is that a yes or no to the question? Are you prepared to support the project, yes or no?
Yes or no?
How would you vote?
So, okay. Quickly repeating the question, how would you vote on the upzoning request for the 130th, 131st Street and Lenox Avenue project called the Robeson, which is currently going through the ULURP process, which we are significantly opposed to due to the height?
I would join you in significantly opposing it.
Excuse me? Okay.
He would join in significantly opposing it.
Okay, thank you.
So I echo that sentiment. I would definitely oppose it. I have already demonstrated through my work at the Manhattan Borough President's Office, where we worked with the association, looking at the details of the proposed zoning, as well as making sure that no additional height was given for this development. We also wanted to make sure that we preserve the character of the neighborhood. And so any proposals that would propose to change the neighborhood in any significant way is a problem for me. I want to make sure that we restore the legacy that has always been carried out in our neighborhoods. I want to make sure that if we are increasing and bringing in new development, that is given back to small businesses so that the commercial spaces are being used appropriately in support of the needs of the community. And I want to make sure that as we're going through the ULURP and land use processes, that it always reflects the needs of those on the ground. So working with the Block Association, we have done that already.
Thank you.
I would also oppose the property that they want to raise the height on. But I think the bigger question is, when we talk about affordability, the mayor has a housing affordability plan that's really not affordable to people in the community. So I think we have to really look at, because we're going to also have a lot of rezoning going on throughout the district, particularly in East Harlem, and it's not going to be affordable to the people in East Harlem. So we have to, I would definitely vote no, but we have to take a serious look at the mayor's affordability plan, because it's one of the things that's pushing the homeless and the job and the housing crisis we're having here in Harlem.
Thank you.
I would also say no, and I agree with most of the panelists here this evening that affordable housing is a major issue in this community. There was a stat that came out about 2 months ago that said 67% of folks that live in Harlem is a paycheck away from being homeless. I think one of the things that needs to happen is we need to first start with a needs assessment. We need to assess the affordable housing that we do have within this district. We need to think about sustainability, and part of that is a holistic approach. So when you look at sustainability, you're looking at creating jobs within the district also, because you can't afford affordable housing if you don't have a job. And then we need to look at the median income, because the median income for quote-unquote affordable housing is not affordable for this district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the mayor's contextual zoning revamp was unilaterally opposed by community boards across the city. It wasn't just here in Harlem, it was across the city where community boards said no. And there were elected officials who stood with their community boards. I would have stood with the Block Association, and I would have opposed the upzoning.
Thank you.
I oppose any measure that seeks to displace, disenfranchise, and continue to the movement of pushing residents out of their district. If we're going to talk about loaning and land use, we got to make sure that the land use is representative and reflective of the community in which it seeks to happen in, and that we maintain the affordability and the sustainability of that place, and making sure that we have safeguards in place where residents can stay in their homes and not be displaced and pushed out for the appeal of a bigger, larger building that only creates the more gentrification in our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd vote no with the consensus of the community and anything that upsets the integrity of the Harlem community. And I'd also make sure that I do safeguard affordable housing and not to displace residents, and to make sure that I support programs that do promote home ownership and affordable housing. So.
Thank you. So for me, well, of course, it's easy to oppose this project. It's just a little bit too high and doesn't go with, as Senator Perkins mentioned, the did you say contextual? Yes, contextual architecture of the block. You know, this is my first time in politics. I haven't even become a politician yet. And, you know, just like most of the people in the room, I think, I've been waking up the past 15 years wondering, why was that building demolished? Why was that building built without residential housing? Why was that building built at all? And I haven't been able to participate as much as I wanted to in that conversation. I'm going to work collaboratively with the builders who are building in our community, and I'm going to make sure that people aren't displaced and that we have a higher amount of actual Harlem current residents who are in that affordable housing, not people moving in from an hour away and taking away that opportunity from people in this room. Oh, which one? Oh, I apologize. Thank you. Take me a moment.
Yeah, I would say no, like the community would say. If the Block Association doesn't want something in their neighborhood, then they shouldn't have it in their neighborhood. And if a developer is going to come into this community and build, they should definitely sit at the table with these block associations to make sure that it fits the mold and shape of that neighborhood or that block. And I don't believe in killing development, but if it's something that the community doesn't want, then I'm not going to support it, period.
I would vote no if it's not beneficial to the community. But one thing we have to examine, I would work more closely, the community and the community board needs to work together to come to an agreement on these projects, because we rely on the community board. And some of these projects make it far past where they should. We have to put a focus on affordable housing that's affordable to people who make an average of $36,000 a year. Okay, that's the average income of people in this community. That is what we have to target in terms of our housing. Contextual appearance is very important, and if the community didn't like it, the block didn't like it, I think that's something that we should have agreed with the community board, as well as the developer coming in. It's a privilege to develop in this community. It is a privilege to develop in this community. They're being done a favor, and they need to act like they want to do what's right by us. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Beverly? Is Beverly Smith? Is Beverly Smith here? Okay, Beverly Smith is the president of the West 130th Street Block Association, and she's going to pose the next question.
Welcome, everyone. So, thank you, Lloyd. So basically, everyone has addressed the first question that we had from the West 130th Street Block Association, which was about the contextual integrity, because we're in the Astor Row block and all of that. We're landmarked, and the block is historically listed, so obviously that impacts us. So the next question I would have would be similar to that and connected to that in terms of the environmental health of the community. With all of the construction and everything going on, not even just the construction, but rats and raccoons and people who don't clean up behind their dogs and all of that has an effect on the health of our community. So how would you address that and enforce the laws that back us up with that? Thank you.
Thank you. Currently through my office on 125th Street, I'm the director of the Northern Manhattan office, which is Constituent Services, and we actively work with the Borough Board and the Borough Service Cabinet, and what that is a compilation of city agency representatives that are intersecting with the needs of this community. So I have actively on a daily basis, help to work with the Department of Health as it relates to rodent issues in the community, which I know cuts across many of our neighborhoods, having walkthroughs and identifying areas that need additional resources to eliminate the rodent problem. But also in terms of public safety and lighting, I'm the staff person who works with NYPD and all of its community councils and assures that the voices and needs of the community as it relates to lighting and having fixtures established in communities to assure safety is there. From the environmental standpoint, I'm also the person who appoints members to the community boards. And in Central Harlem, you know that Community Board 10 is one of those boards that continues to make decisions. And we have committees that continue to work on the issues of environmental affairs. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Athena. Thank you.
We can give Athena a round of applause. So when I lived on this block, I lived at 116, and I had just come out of college, and you know, I was always cooking for a family, and that family was a family of mice. I was always cooking for 3 or more, okay? And the rodent problem is significant, not just in this neighborhood, but also in Harlem. So here's what I would do. Number one, I think it's high time that we start holding city agencies accountable. The city council has oversight on city agencies. So that means having tough conversations with the Department of Sanitation, but also assessing whether or not they have their resources to be able to pick up and do what they need to do in a timely manner. The second issue is also talking to some of the businesses in the neighborhood to ensure that their carding policies are in accordance with city law. There's another type of environmental pollution that I think gets lost in Harlem, and that's noise pollution, okay? I think we need to have a tracking mechanism in ambulances, fire trucks, and even NYPD cars, so that every time that siren is hit, we have a tracker that's able to report out in the mayor's management report why they did that to this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with all my colleagues, but I would like to add a couple of more points to it. I think we need to look at this issue from a more technological aspect. There's currently a federal program called a City Smart Initiative. It's a pool of money to help cities with different issues such as noise, such as air pollution, etc. It's monies you can access through the federal government, through your legislature, and these monies go towards technology that you could put on every block, and you would be able to get moment by moment sound regarding noise, but secondly, regarding asthma and things that are in the air that are hazardous to our health. There's a stats that came out that show that one of the number one cause of folks going to the emergency room, missing work or missing school is asthma. We have some of the highest asthma rate in this district. And I would like for us to consider this technology. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask every speaker since there are people coming in after you introduce yourself, be kind enough to at least say your name again so they know who's speaking.
My name is Marvin Holland, and I'm a candidate for the city council in the 9th district. What I would do, we just recently did a program out in Brooklyn where we took 2 zip codes that had really bad health problems. And it was done in collaboration with MIT, Medgar Evers College, and the high schools in Brooklyn, along with 1199 and the Nurses Union and my union, the Transport Workers Union. And what we did was what was called the Community Participation Health Project, where the students went in and looked at all of the conditions that are causing health problems inside of these communities that had really bad health conditions, very similar to the ones that we have here in Harlem. I would put together a project like that. We have plenty of colleges and schools right here in the community, and let's really look at how does transportation impact your health or lack of? How does the environment impact your health?
Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you.
I would just like to say one thing. If there's an empty seat next to you, please raise your hand so that people in the back who are standing up, okay, can be seated. Okay, so please come in and be seated. Okay, I'm sorry, who's next? Okay,
Hi, my name's Caprice Alves again, and I am an official candidate for the New York City Council District 9. When I was vice president of this block association, I worked closely with the NYPD to make sure that the bikes wouldn't make the noise, because I agree with Larry that the noise pollution is a problem too. So the inspector, and it was Inspector Harris at the time, worked very closely with me to make sure that we could at least eradicate that issue. That was just one small thing. And then with the inspectors at the sanitation department, they would be very accommodating and come make sure that they would take care of our garbage, even on off times. So I'm big on quality of life. I think that everything doesn't require new legislation. Some things require enforcing legislation and ensuring that people have, or entities have, the resources that they need to make sure that they are addressing our quality of life issues here in Harlem. So I'd make sure, I'd support those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Donald Fields. One of the things that I believe is that there's a project called Project Cleanup that goes around and educates people on the importance of keeping their neighborhoods and their streets clean. That's one of the things that we can start to introduce and have people have weekly meetings about how to keep our streets and our community clean too. Is to appeal to these businesses that has an excess of food and throw it out on a curb late at night, and then rats attract and then they scurry about. So having a program like the City Harvest does, where they give you certain types of incentives to donate food to their food bank, and instead it decreases the excess that we have in our streets, and it curtails the rodent problem. And the second thing is to enforce the laws that are already on the book. The only way we're going to have a healthier street, healthier district, is we start policing ourselves. And that's increasing the loitering laws that's already on the book, making sure that we take ownership of our own district and not looking for anybody to take ownership of it.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Todd Stevens. So when I think about my past 15 years here and I think about rats, I think about the vacant lots, and I think about the vacant buildings, and I think about my first year in real estate where I went around on a motorcycle and looked at, like, I don't know how many vacant buildings in one day. And, you know, our city has allowed, with, you know, unlimited ability for an owner to have a vacant building with rats, with mice, with God knows what kind of insects, as long as they want. So I think we have to have limitations on how long someone can have a building vacant, how long they can have a piece of vacant land, and not to take you away from focus, but restaurants, seems like anybody who lives above a restaurant has a rat problem in their apartment. As city councilman, I'd like walk inside of that restaurant and just make sure that all that food's put away at night. I mean, I can't walk in there every night, of course, but I'm just trying to, you know, give some solutions. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think that I'm sorry, I'm Cordell Clear. And I was part of a movement to get better for protection against lead paint poisoning. That lead paint was an issue because of the condition of the homes that we live in. Often the paint is peeling, and that's what caused it in our apartments. But you know, one thing that I learned during that process is that there's such a thing as environmental racism. It seems as if there are problems that affect certain communities that go unaddressed. And one of the biggest problems we have in our community is asthma and other upper respiratory problems. Currently, there is legislation in the City Council calling on landlords to inspect their property for underlying conditions and triggers that cause those things and to correct them. Leaks that cause mold and other conditions need to be addressed so that our children and our families are not living in these conditions and getting sicker and sicker.
Hello again, my name is Troy Outlaw and I'm a candidate for the New York City Council in the 9th District. I agree with all of my colleagues here, and I know firsthand from getting calls from most of you all when I worked for Inez Dickens. So I understand where you're coming from. However, I think that it's going to take all of us to make sure that City Hall hears us, to make sure that when we're having these problems with rodents and garbage and construction and noise, that we hold City Hall accountable for not taking action or not having our garbage picked up on time or not having certain construction permits accessible and available so that we can see the time that it's supposed to be working. So I know that's a big issue here in this community, and I want to do all that I can to address it with your help. Thank you.
So I'm going to pose the next question. How would you increase home ownership opportunities for low income, moderate, and middle income Harlem residents? And we'll start with you.
One of the things I would do is support the tenant interim lease program, which is a program that allows buildings that have been not well kept, that have been turned over to the city years ago. It allows the tenants in the building to take over the property, run the property, and ultimately be able to purchase their apartments for a very affordable price. Currently, we have many of those properties and we have those buildings and even some HDFCs which have gone through the TIL process, which have not been properly supported by the city in terms of funding. We need to make sure that we fund those properties and bring people into those buildings so that we can have more low income and affordable, real affordable home ownership opportunities for those people. Those are good, that's a good program because the people who are participating in it are invested in the community. They have taken on a responsibility and said that they want to take over the property and they want to run it. And we should support that. And I don't think the city does enough to do that.
I agree with my colleague, but what I would say also is that we have a lot of vacant properties here, and if you're not going to build or do anything with the property, then relinquish it, and so that someone else can come in who can afford to keep up the taxes, because we have to make sure that we keep the character of this neighborhood the way that it is, but we also want to make sure that the people who paid their dues and stayed in this community can stay here. A lot of our property owners are drowning in taxes, and we have a forum every year to address it, and we bring city finance up here to try to get a hold of what's going on with their water bills, their taxes, and things like that. And so I want to continue that program, but I also want to try and get as many people as possible to get home ownership, because home ownership is a path to prosperity, so to speak, because you can also rent out properties and things like that. But I want to make sure that it's affordable for our residents. Thank you.
One of the things that I think I would like to do is to educate more people about how, one of the things that I would like to do is to educate people on how to own a home, about the FHA loans that are out there and other loans that help new homeowners be able to gain capital to buy a home. Second, I would like to look into programs that support those first-time homeowner buyers to help them with classes and closure courses, but also if we are able to give tax breaks for people who come into this district and build and we subsidize the payment, then we should be able to afford tax breaks for those people that want to be homeowners, and also support existing programs that are on the books as well.
First, I want to, rats. You feed them, you breed them. We had a long campaign related to the rodent infestation problem in our neighborhoods, and unwittingly, in some instances, we fed them, and we bred them by virtue of our garbage disposal practices. And this has been a very, very significant, though ugly, issue that many of us did not want to face because it's not sexy in politics to want to talk about rats. But nevertheless, it was an infestation that not only was evident on a daily basis in our neighborhoods, in our schools, as well as in our homes. So I think that's a big issue. I'm glad it was brought up, and I want to appreciate the role that Cordell just used to deal with it. Our office is interested in sustaining that movement, and not only from the perspective of rodents, but there are other sort of health-related issues related to how we do our garbage disposal as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. I apologize, but for personal reasons, I have to now leave for another important personal issue that I have to address.
Excuse me, Senator, do you want to take one more minute to talk about home ownership for low, moderate, and middle income Harlem residents?
Well, you know, home ownership is important for anyone that wants home ownership, whether high income or low income. And we have had programs and efforts made in the past that were very successful in improving the opportunities for lower income families to get access to affordable ownership opportunities, whether in terms of turning their buildings into co-ops when the city would take that property and put them in the so-called tenant interim lease program that ultimately they could buy the apartment for $250 and convert it into a co-op. We need to go back to concepts like that so that we begin to look at our real estate and our properties that are available and see how we can structure policies and financing in such a way that opportunities for ownership are affordable in terms of what's available in the pockets of people in our neighborhoods. I think you can do that. I think that was a very rich moment when that was done in the past. There are many folks from this neighborhood who now continue to own their apartments and those from the perspective of those TIL programs. We want to see that expanded for even more opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Hi, I'm Larry Scott Blackman, and I'm a candidate for City Council. I want to echo the sentiments of many of my colleagues here, particularly as it relates to the TIL program. But I think there's one aspect of this conversation that's being left out, and that is financial education at an early age. For many of I don't know about you, but when I went to college, I basically signed up for a credit card so I could receive the water bottle. Okay? And if you're like me, please raise your hand. Okay? There's a lot of water bottles in the room. Amen. So we need to have a focus, particularly in this community, on home ownership, because we can fund programs. There were many programs that have been established, but if you have people set on a path to home ownership without proper financial education, it's like being on a rudderless ship. Thank you, Jolinda. Thank you.
My name is Marvin Holland, and once again, I want to deal directly with this issue. The TIL issue is an issue I've been working on. I'm a board member of Palante for quite some time, but we've taken it a step further in my campaign, and what we did was, if you read my literature, we want to create the Housing Legacy Program for people in Harlem. And what that would do is that there's 155 buildings that are owned by the city that are in the TIL program in District 9. And half of those apartments are vacant. what we would do is make sure the people that are there get to stay there and get to own their apartments. But just as important that when people are going away and going to college, et cetera, or going to the military and coming back to Harlem, they can't afford to live here. So we want to create a program that when people go away and lived in Harlem for a long time, that they can stay here too. So we're trying to create this housing legacy program to put this together to keep long-term residents inside of Harlem. And we're very close to getting all the pieces in place, and I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Cooper. I agree with my colleagues here, but I believe we need to take it a step further. Education, we all know education is needed. And it starts from a very young age that we're teaching our kids that when you invest in your home, it's like putting money back into a savings bank that you can leverage for a lot of different things. So that's one piece. But another piece that's not being discussed is financing. We need to look at alternate financing for folks that want to own homes. A lot of times, I don't know about yourself, but you go to school, you leave school, and you're piled with debt. And it's difficult for you to get financing. So I would be pushing for a financing option through the city in which our money that we invest as a city can be used to finance as an alternate financing to get folks into homes. Lastly, I would say this, is jobs. We need to find a way to create more jobs within this district so folks can be able to stay in their home. And as your next city council person, I plan to create more jobs within this district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am a homeowner, and it was one of the most intimidating things to go into a process to establish myself, one, to have the credit that would meet the approval of all of the banks and institutions I was appealing to, but also as someone who did not have generational wealth. It was a huge undertaking that I felt was impossible at the time. But what helped me is what I would continue to use in my candidacy and as a legislator to propose reforms that help to take the best practices that we know exist in our community for putting ourselves in the pipeline for home ownership. So some of that is the education that my colleagues talked about. Some of it is the financing. But also it's looking at a range of options. So when we talk about affordability and preserving housing in Harlem, we have to talk about not just the TIL program, but we have to talk about the Mitchell-Lama programs and how we keep those, protect those, and preserve those so that cooperatives are another necessary option of home ownership for our residents that can be achieved. We have to also make sure that we have other options as well, like HDFCs. That's all.
Hey, good evening. My name's Todd Stevens, and I could talk for 10 hours about this subject because of my 15 years of experience in real estate. But the bottom line is, I don't know if everybody knows this, but just like 15% of Harlem residents own their homes, maximum. You go to other communities in Manhattan, and it rises to 30 or 40%. Now that's unreal. It's completely unfair, and it's unjust. So, of course, when I see a building on 125th Street that was built 3 stories high, and there aren't 50 homes on top of that building, including affordable housing, I just wonder, and I wonder all day long, why that was allowed to happen. And beyond that, the HDFCs, we have probably 50 HDFCs that are at peril right now. They need assistance. They need assistance to stay alive and to stay strong, to be able to afford to pay their bills. And so those homeowners aren't shut out of their homes. I'm going to welcome every HDFC homeowner and those buildings to come into my offices and solve their problems. Thank you.
As an adjunct professor, if anybody understands the salary of an adjunct professor, I can speak to being a dual homeowner with minimal income. It's possible. So I would agree with one of my colleagues that we need to inform people of what's possible, what's available for them. And I also strongly support the TIL program, which is an affordable housing program that does give home ownership to low-income families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next moderator is Connie Lee, the president of the Marcus Garvey Park Alliance.
Hi. I'm going to take this back to the affordable housing question. I know you wanted me to ask about parks. We have one of those. I think Val's going to ask that question. This is sort of a two-part question, and the first part of it is really just yes or no. So we all know there's a rezoning proposal for East Harlem. About 25% of the area being proposed is in Council District 9. So I'm going to ask all of you, first of all, have you looked at that proposal? It is online, Department of City Planning. And the second part of that question is, if you have looked at it, the obvious pro, and there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, is affordable housing, mandatory affordable housing. Is it enough affordable housing? And how would you encourage developers to build significantly more affordable housing?
Okay, so who wants to jump in? Who wants to take that first?
No, go ahead. Said the first part was a yes and no?
Yes.
Well, yes or no?
Have you read it, and if you have?
Yes, kind of long. I'm not going to say I went into great detail with it, but I have looked at it. And my problem with it is that the plan is not, the affordable housing plan in the East Harlem zoning plan is not affordable for people in East Harlem. It may be affordable for people somewhere else, but it's certainly not affordable for the people in East Harlem. That plan will cause more people to be pushed out of Harlem. That plan will cause more homelessness. So I would not support that plan in its current form. What needs to happen is there needs to be real affordable housing built, and you can't do it with the current AMI that they're using, particularly in East Harlem. It's about a $14,000, $15,000 difference. So I would be against the plan. What I would also say is that I think we can go back and look at it. There was a lot, first question we need to ask ourselves, the original plan went from 94th Street, and the new plan only starts at 104th Street. So we have to talk about why there were those changes.
Thank you. Good evening again. I'm Charles Cooper for some of the new folks that walked into the room. And like my colleague, I have reviewed over the plan. My background is engineering. In engineering, you look at plans and you look at details. I can't support that plan. As been mentioned before, it's not affordable for the district itself. But we must look at other ways that we can bring down the cost for developers. And as I look at the plans, one of the things I don't see is a use of green technology. Green technology oftentimes will save a developer close to 20% over the next 10 to 20 years. So one of the things I will do is encourage developers that's coming into the neighborhood. First of all, it's good for the community that you're using green technology. But secondly, listen, this is another avenue of lowering your bottom line and making sure that affordable housing is affordable. Thank you.
Yes, I've seen that, and I agree. I have a problem with the formula with AMI that's being used because it contains elements of counties from upstate, okay, and Long Island. And that determines affordability here in Harlem. And, you know, having lived in this community and have friends who grew up here, went to college, decided that New York was not affordable and left and owned homes in other rural communities, I think it's high time that we really start to take a look at that. What we need to do with developers, because I understand all sides of an issue, I try to look at it before making a decision. Developers will say, well, unless we upzone, we will have difficulty receiving financing for the project, right? Isn't that what they say? Okay, so then the question becomes, what's the city's role in assisting to making sure that that these projects are affordable, that they're contextual in terms of zoning, and they make sense for the city? And I think it's high time that we have difficult conversations about these formulas.
Thank you, Larry.
Sorry, Jolinda. Thank you.
Regina, would you take a moment and explain to the general audience what AMI means, as we're using terminology. So if you could just tell them.
Okay, so AMI stands for Area Median Income, and basically what they do is they look at it's really a large geographic area to determine what the median income is. And as they mentioned, it includes Westchester, Long Island. That's why the incomes are much higher than the incomes, the AMI, of Harlem residents, or East Harlem residents, or even West Harlem residents. So that is a sticking point. And we need to make certain that our councilmen and our community planning board holds firm when it comes to projects that come before this community that don't meet the needs of our community. So no. We gotta be fair.
So Troy, just one point. So everybody's understanding that when they say AMI, they're talking about how it's calculated in Long Island, upstate New York, and how it impacts on our area, because we're all in that same grouping.
Yes. To speak on AMI, yes, it includes Westchester County, Bergen County, which is in New Jersey, Suffolk County, which is in Long Island, and Nassau County. And these three, out of those four, three of them are the richest counties in the tri-state area. So to have that comprised in the 5 boroughs is totally unfair. And when you have legislators from upstate that don't know the population and people that live in the city of New York making these decisions, it's unfair. So that's something that needs to be brought back to the city of New York, maybe by repealing the Erstat law. That's something that we can look at. But I did look at the plan. The question is, the answer is yes to that question. And I did work on the plan, and I remember being at the community board at Community Board 11, looking at it, and that was something that they did not want at all, because we can't afford it. And the rent is too damn high, period. And so we can't afford it, and even, okay, thank you.
So just to echo some of the sentiments of my colleagues, the East Harlem rezoning plan, as well as the efforts that have been underway in Inwood, have been major cornerstones of the work of my office. We've been working closely with Community Board 11, as well as the exploratory work in Community Board 12. I definitely believe that any zoning that's done in our community has to reflect the conversations that are happening at the community, neighborhood, and board levels. I also think that anytime that you're talking about AMI, which we've had described, we also need to look at the financing side of things, because anytime you want a lower AMI or you want more affordability, you have to make sure that you're working in partnership with the other levels of government that are responsible for financing. So working with HUD, working with ACR at the state level, and certainly at the city level. We have to make sure we're working with HPD. And there are financing options out there, whether it's 421A or we're looking at low-income tax credits, but we have to make sure that any legislator in this seat knows how to work with those bodies. Thank you.
I'm going to echo much of what was already said. We do have to look at income-targeted housing. We have to stop looking at AMI. It's a fraud. We're not going to be able to afford it. We have to look at the incomes of the people who live in the communities where this housing is being built. There has to be a bigger commitment from developers that are getting this wonderful opportunity to develop in our communities. If you want to develop for this community, this is who lives here, and this is what we need to do. We also do have to look at other areas of government. I'm feeling hopeful about Ben Carson.
You never know.
Recent events. That's why I'm saying that. Recent events, we have to look at our federal government. We have a new congressman. We have to hold him accountable. We have to remind him what we need done. We can't sit here and say that this is the case and look where there's not any money. Seems shorter for me.
I support I'm Caprice Alves. I support lowering AMI or having a flexible operational definition of AMI, tailored to the individual and not really a blanket measurable definition. But also, yes, I'm familiar with the plan, and I say that everything doesn't require a new look, a new legislative approach. It just requires sometimes enforcement and oversight, and I think that would be a good approach to eradicating whatever difficulties that brings.
I have read the plan. I have glanced over the plan. I have read the plan and have glanced over it. In its present construction, I would not support it. I believe that there needs to be some adjustments and some tailor made to it. One, I believe that more community participation needs to be included in the plan. Second, we need to really seek to understand and identify some of the things in which it seeks to help the community in. We can always have a debate about affordability and whether we get enough low or affordable income housing units out of the deal, but we need to look at other alternative sources of funding as well, because as my colleague said, whenever you want to drive down the AMI, you also have to subsidize that by something, and that comes from other forms of grants and other forms of subsidies that will be needed to replace the lowering of the AMI. So we need to do a holistic thing and really looking at it, detaching it, and making sure developers are representing the best interests of the people in that community and not focusing on raising new buildings that just further displace its residents.
Hey, I'm Todd Stevens, and I'm running for City Council like everybody here. So as far as the AMI, I'd be interested to know who has fought against it or tried to change it. I haven't heard of anyone trying to change it in the past 10 years, but I think these are very excellent points as far as lowering the AMI, making it more New York City centric versus Bergen County. That sounds ridiculous. As far as the East Harlem rezoning, of course we need more affordable housing units. We need more people to have home ownership regardless of what income level they have. I am very concerned about the East Harlem blocks in District 9 because I apologize to say, some of the most beautiful blocks in East Harlem are in District 9. And we want to keep those blocks looking beautiful, contextual, as Perkins said. And if we can build something more significant, that should be in a location that doesn't affect the light of everybody else. Thank you.
Okay. The City Council members have discretionary funds. In the past, it has been difficult or almost impossible to find out what discretionary City Council funds were used for or how the decision to fund a project was made. How would you make your City Council discretionary funding more transparent? And what process would you use to ensure that community input was used as a basis for the decision to fund various projects?
Well, as a person familiar with this process, one, I would say being on the finance committee and making sure that you're on the budget negotiating team, but also bringing together the community. I don't believe in participatory budgeting. That's just my personal opinion, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's only $1 million that you get to use and tell where it goes. I believe in being on the negotiating team and bringing the community in and saying, this is what's up for grabs. This is what I think we should do. What do you think we should do? And not just take it upon myself to do it on my own because I can't do anything by myself. But that's why I don't believe in participatory budgeting. It's a long process. It's very tedious, and it's only for $1 million. Why take $1 million when there's $100 million on the table? So,
excuse me, Regina and I would like to ask, could someone just clarify for the general audience what we mean by discretionary funds?
Sure. So we're talking about monies that are made available through the city budget. In the case of my office, the Manhattan Borough President provides discretionary funding. So when I talk to you about the fact that we've allocated $27 million, that's discretionary funding and capital funding that comes through the city budget. We're talking about programmatic monies that provide for expenses for any of the community-based organizations that are providing resources and supports. And so I would certainly continue to operate as a legislator, advocating and negotiating at the budget table to ensure that we're bringing back the greatest needs to our community. But also, right now, what we do is to have transparency. You know, everything is posted online. We make that as available as possible to the community. We also, through our storefront, have hard copies of information. We circulate that through the various bodies and boards that we serve on so that the community knows it at large. And then we also make sure that we have an opportunity to have dialogue, whether it's the participatory budgeting process that's been referenced, or community board meetings where there are budget subcommittees that talk about the availability of funding through my office.
So I definitely believe in participatory, sorry about that. I definitely believe in participatory budgeting. I think it's been a dilemma in the past 10 years that we're the only remaining district in Manhattan that does not have participatory budgeting as far as I know. So it's not up to the city councilman doesn't know everything. Even if you vote for me, or anybody here, we're not going to know everything. We need the community to help us understand where $1 million goes. Marcus Garvey Park Alliance, for them to get $5,000 is like somebody else getting $50,000. So why not allocate the money there if they do have a need or a purpose? Or Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association and all sorts of other nonprofits. So participatory budgeting is 100% necessary. No matter who you vote for, please demand it from everyone standing and sitting here. Thank you.
And I agree with my colleague regarding participatory budgeting. I agree with it 100%. But I think prior to that, there needs to be a needs assessment. I think oftentimes we have a lot of organizations and we don't know where the needs are. So I think a proper needs assessment should be done, and that information should be shared with the community. And then the community can come together and decide what's our priority. But I'll take it a step further, because our community need a lot more than the discretionary funds will bring. I think we need to look at how we can bring corporate participation into this, how we can partner up with corporate, so we have funding for our not-for-profit organization, we have funding for other initiatives that will better our youth, our seniors, our folks that's going through transition, etc. Because I've walked the district in the past 5 months, talking to folks, and we have a lot of needs in this district, but we are not looking at other options. And what I would do as your next city council person is look at other options. Thank you.
In my experience, discretionary funding, first of all, is funding that's really designed for the council member to be able to help enhance programs that are already being funded. It's a small amount of money. It comes, but sometimes it goes a very, very long way, depending on where it's being allocated to. We need to look at bigger chunks of money in our youth department and in other areas that can fund many of the programs that need larger amounts of money. The answer is, of course, transparency. The community should get a report of where this money goes. In fact, you have to describe what it's being used for. We should know where these programs are located, who it serves, and people would better understand why we're allocating money to these organizations. But often this is money that's given to our smaller groups, to our resident associations, tenant associations, others who do valuable work in this community for our children, for our seniors, senior programs that feed, but it's not enough money to give to everybody to fund their programs entirely. Thank you.
So I'm big on community collaboration, so I'd make sure that the community was always up to date with what we were spending the money on. I'd establish a report that would be disseminated throughout the community, and I'm a big supporter of participatory budgeting, and in fact, I just attended one by Councilman Mark Levine recently because I wanted to see what it looked like in action, and it was a very progressive event. You could see my article on roommatenewyork.com. And I just briefly wrote about it, and it was a very progressive thing. It involved the community, everybody pitching in with their ideas, saying how they wanted to spend this $1 million, and even if it's just $1 million, it's $1 million that the community gets to weigh in on and say how they want this to be spent in their own area. So I'm big on that. I would continue that process.
Hi, once again. I'm Larry Scott Blackman, candidate for council. You know, I think there are too many lobbyists on the steps of City Hall and not enough community members. Let's start there. Because the lobbyists understand how to bring home the bacon for their clients. And I think it's time that the community stand up and be a part of that process so that city council members see them on the steps of City Hall at midnight when decisions are being made. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of participatory budgeting, I do support participatory budgeting, and I've worked in city agencies where city agencies had an issue with it because the pot was so small. That what happens, and we need to get out of the business of having actions just to say that we did them, right? If you're going to have a participatory budget process where you only have $1 million and the Department of Parks says, this $1 million cannot fund this, so they purposefully narrow you down to a water fountain, that's not participatory budgeting, okay? So I think we need to increase the pot, and we need to have a larger conversation, and it needs to be the mayoral administration side that makes commitments to adding money for participatory budgeting. Thank you.
My name is Marvin Holland. I am a proponent of participatory budgeting, but I think it has to be done in a way that there is real community involvement. As far as transparency, what I would do is just issue a report at the end of the year to the community. This is what the discretionary funds was used for, and have it up on the council website, my website, and just say, this is what the funds were used for, this is the organizations we gave to, because my colleagues are right. Discretionary funds are very important, particularly since we've lost them in the state, to keep all the small nonprofits and stuff in the community running. Thank you.
To the question on how do we make the discretionary funds more transparent, I believe we can make it easier for to access for residents. One, we can have town hall style information events where we come to the community in certain communities, community centers, community boards, and speak about the discretionary process, what happens, how it goes about, and where the money is allocated at, as well as mailers. We do mailers when we're in office or when we're trying to gain office, or just little newsletters that's happened there. So, and I know sometimes it's put into letters, but make sure that we always put it into letters to make sure that we are always making sure that information is abreast and upfront, and that you're able to view it and really see where the money is going.
Okay, our next up moderator, Ms. Valerie Jo Bradley, from President of Save Harlem Now.
Hello, I am head of a preservation organization that was created to save Harlem, or what's left of Harlem. And most of us know that Harlem has far less historic buildings and blocks landmarked, and because of that, it flows into the mayor's program of upzoning if buildings aren't protected and knocked down. It complements the mayor's program to have more buildings. So my question is, the previous council person co-introduced and voted for Intro 775, which preservation organizations felt weakened the landmark laws as well as weakened the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Will you support legislation that would strengthen it and not fall into the ploy of weakening landmark laws?
Yes. Cordell Clear, yes.
Troy Outlaw, yes.
Donald Fields, yes.
Yes, but also our office worked most recently with the backlog of landmarks preservation. Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Charles Cooper, yes.
Yes.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Caprice Alves, yes.
Todd Stevens, yes.
Okay, so now we're going to, we're going to continue with a yes and no question. So the first question, oh, I'm sorry. So Stanley, here, you pose this question. This is one of yours, a yes or no.
Okay. I guess for the short answer, this is a rather long one. Okay. Homeless shelters and support facilities. Harlem Community Planning Board 10 passed a resolution under the previous chair. I'm sorry. Harlem Community Planning Board 10 passed a resolution under the previous chair issuing a moratorium on the development of any more shelters or supportive service residents in Community Board 10. Since the area had been inundated with more than its fair share of these resources, and many of the homeless in these facilities are not even from the community, as members of the board, had, quote, testified. As a council representative, do you support this moratorium? And what would you do to ensure that it became an element of city policy to address the issue? Okay, we just, okay, do you support it? Do you support it?
Do I support the moratorium? Yes.
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 I don't support a permanent moratorium.
Yes.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Yes.
Charles Cooper, yes.
Larry Scott Blackman, yes.
Okay. Peggy Shepard?
Speak into the mic.
Boy, I think Cecil. Okay, so. Okay, Cecil. Okay, from We Act is going to pose this question. Next question. Followed by Keith.
Oh, great. Thanks. Currently, as was referenced by candidate Cordell Clear, there is a bill called Intro 385. It's known as the Asthma-Free Homes Bill. The former city council member did not get on as a co-sponsor of that bill, so the question to each of you is, will you, once you get into the council, one, get onto that bill, and two, vote in favor of it? So Intro 385 is known as the Asthma-Free Homes Bill. It is modeled after the lead poisoning law that currently exists in the city. And what it does, it essentially requires that landlords be informed by the residents in their homes whether or not they have a diagnosed respiratory illness. If they do, they then have to take care of the underlying conditions such as mold or pest infestation that trigger asthma or other types of respiratory illnesses, and eradicate those in a prescribed way within a defined period of time.
Cordell Clear, yes.
Troy Outlaw, yes.
Donald Fields, yes.
Oh, you need this.
In between. Yes.
Charles Cooper, yes.
Athena Moore, yes.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Caprice Alves, yes.
Todd Stevens, yes.
Second part. There are two bills in the City Council that require environmental justice protections for communities like Harlem and other communities that are predominantly African American or Latino. These bills would both require that there is a study conducted and policies put in place to better protect those communities from environmental injustices. Do you all support those bills? They are Intro 886 and Intro 359. Neither of them were co-sponsored by the previous council member, and the question to you all is, will you get on those bills, and then will you support them? The purpose of each of those bills is to conduct studies in environmental justice communities like Harlem, determine what policies are better needed to protect those communities from environmental injustices, engage members of the community in that process of developing those policies, and create a report to the City Council about that. Do each of you support those bills? Will you get on as co-sponsors and then vote for them? Start over there. Okay.
Cordell Clear, yes, yes.
Troy Outlaw, yes, yes.
Go there.
Donald Fields, yes.
Yes.
Charles Cooper, yes.
Yes, Athena Moore.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Caprice Alves, yes.
Todd Stevens, yes.
Okay, you've heard it. They've all confirmed.
Our next moderator is Keith Taylor, president of the Dorrance Brooks Property Owners and Residents Association.
Good evening, candidates. The first question is regarding seniors and deed transfers. Will you support legislation / regulations to minimize theft of properties by deed transfers, particularly for seniors? Yep, I'll read it again. Sure. Will you support legislation / regulations to minimize the theft of properties by deed transfers, particularly for seniors? Because that's been a pretty big problem here.
Absolutely.
Yes, most certainly.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yes.
Absolutely, and it is a priority on my platform.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Athena Moore, yes.
Charles Cooper, yes, without a question.
I feel like we're a singing group, the way we're sharing this mic. You know, it's like Sam and Dave. Larry Scott Blackman, yes.
Excellent. Homeowners are responsible for keeping the sidewalks clean, including 18 inches into the street, as well as proper garbage / recycling disposal. Sanitation inspectors often target homeowners for easy tickets because most work outside of the home and the accumulation of debris, recycling, and animal waste occurs while no one is at home to remove it. It's difficult to fight the ticket, which is sometimes issued outside of the, quote, enforcement routing hours, 8 a.m. to 8:59 a.m. and 6 p.m. to 6:59 p.m. Furthermore, homeowners cannot challenge the ticket unless he or she has documentation, such as a photograph documenting the culprit. Will you support legislation to change the, quote, enforcement routing hours to sometime between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. and require sanitation inspectors to photograph violations with date and time stamped on those photos?
It's a very important question. Could you just put a little more meat on what
Sure.
you're saying?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Homeowners are getting tickets for litter and trash and animal waste when they are at work. So it's not theirs. So will you support legislation that will make the routing, the enforcement of these laws more in tune with the fact that most of these people that own homes are going to work during the day? So the enforcement should occur during the evening, which gives them an opportunity to clean up around their house before the enforcement takes place. So that's what that is. And the ticket as well.
They must be able, we want the inspection.
To document it.
Inspectors to take a photograph, date and time stamped, you know, to prove that the litter was in fact in front of our homes or 18 inches in the street. Because we're also responsible for debris that extends 18 inches into the street. Okay, sidewalk plus 18 inches, so, yes or no?
So, excuse me, Regina, let me just ask the people distributing material in the church. Excuse me, sir. would you be kind enough to do that at the exit? That should not be happening during the meeting. So we're asking everyone to please not do that. Please go right ahead.
Yes.
Before she answers, Lloyd, I want to add something to that, so that you know the entire.
I'm taking it because I want our Reverend to reintroduce himself. Please stand up.
Reverend James Kilgore, pastor of Friendship Baptist Church, so that the entire community knows. Everyone in this community is being summoned when it comes to debris. We receive them so many times. So they're targeting everyone, and it doesn't make a difference because you can have the photos, etc. They are still targeting everybody in the community. So I think they should be made aware of that.
Cordell Clear, yes, I would put more burden on them to prove that this occurred in front of your home. And yes, I would encourage working in the hours that people are home and have an opportunity to correct.
Yes, definitely. Put your tax dollars to work.
Donald Fields, and yes,
Larry Scott Blackman, but I think we need to go a step further. We need to take a look at the rulemaking process, and we also need to take a look at the Environmental Control Board. Thank you.
You guys have the mic.
Charles Cooper, yes. This is our city. We pay taxes, and our tax dollars are supposed to be working for us and not against us.
Yes, many of our policies are antiquated, and I would work as a fierce advocate to make sure that it reflects current needs.
Yes, I would support the measures and be an advocate for it.
Yes, I'm in support of protecting homeowners, yes. Caprice Alves.
Todd Stevens, I'm sorry, I don't think this is good enough, the setup of the fines and when they occur. I mean, chicken legs are often tossed in front of my house at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I would revisit this entirely and start from scratch because I feel like there's 10 different problems going on with this.
Very true. Okay, last question. Automobile ownership is a necessity for many residents, some of whom reverse commute to their source of employment, which may not be on a convenient transportation route, especially when employment is near or outside of a suburb. With the current increased demand for parking spaces and further loss because of the mayor's housing affordability program, which reduces the requirement for on-site parking, will you have the current ban on building garages above 110th Street lifted?
Let me again ask you to restate that succinctly. It's a very important question.
Yes. Parking is becoming increasingly difficult for everyone in this community. I know that a couple of parking garages in southern part of Harlem, 108th Street, are designated to be destroyed. So the ban on parking garages north of 110th Street that's critical to the ability for this community to absorb more residents who need vehicles to get to work, to and from work. So the question is, will you support the current ban on building garages north of 110th Street to be lifted?
I think, the devil is in the details for some of these things. I would like to look at the legislation, but I understand the need for more parking. But I do remember a time that a lot of abandoned property was being used for parking, and we could have used that for housing. So I would like to look at that in ways that we could increase parking, and I would support opportunities for parking.
Troy Outlaw, yes.
Donald Fields, I would support parking, but like my colleague said, I think we need to look into the avenues and ways in which we can create more parking, and to look at the legislation a little bit further to see how we can update it so that it can be more representative of us and make sure that it's being applied correctly.
Yes.
Charles Cooper, yes.
Yes, I would support additional parking.
Marvin Holland, yes.
Caprice Alves, yes.
Todd Stevens, yes, and we need to have a sticker system where people can buy a sticker that represents their neighborhood that they can put in their windshield, so my friends here in this room no longer wait for an hour just to get a parking space.
Thank you.
Be respectful of everybody.
Okay, we have.
Excuse me, Regina, we have another candidate.
Oh boy. Okay. Welcome. Welcome. Maybe you can stand up and introduce yourself quickly.
Good evening, church. I apologize for being late. I'm still working full-time. I work in finance, and it's a very demanding job. However, I wanted to be here, and I apologize for being late, but I'm here, and I'm so glad to be with you all, so thank you. Oh, I'm Dawn Simmons. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay. We have another one, a quick yes or no. We know that there's currently a plan of legislation about the plastic bags and. Okay, sorry. I'm okay. All right. Sorry about that. We know that the city's, I guess, contemplating or going to act on legislation about plastic bags and carryout. We have a more, I guess, a more draconian way to look at the issue. We would like to know, yes or no, would you support legislation to just abolish the use of plastic bags? Anywhere. Some may laugh and say, oh, why don't you say that? Why, in some places, like in Rwanda, they have been banned. In other places, they are banned. But anyway.
I would consider alternative ways to protect the environment. I don't know if we're ready to ban plastic bags just yet, but I do think there's much more that can be done, and we need to look at it.
I agree with my colleague. I don't think that I would completely ban them, but look at ways to come to other alternatives, because the way that the legislation is framed now, it really hurts low-income families.
I'm going to stay up here. All right. I support measures in which we reduce our use of plastic bags, but I would not eliminate. But I do believe that we need to find a way on how we reduce our use and put a plan in place of alternative means that we can have.
Hi, I'm opposed to the nickel fee because of seniors, and I'm concerned about them being able to do it. And I don't think you can really objectively answer a question like that without studying what the impact would be across the board. I'm open to it, but I would certainly want to talk to other experts in the environmentalism field and on the business field. Thank you.
I'm Charles Cooper, and I agree. I would not look to ban, but we have to be a progressive society, and part of being a progressive society is our ability to minimize our global and environmental footprint is very important. I think as a city, we need to look at that and look at other options. Thank you.
Again, Athena Moore, I certainly support efforts to have more environmentally friendly and more conscious efforts to eliminate waste. And so to the degree that continuation of having plastic bags contribute to waste, I would definitely oppose initiatives that continue to promote waste.
I'm very much against the current 5-cent tax. I think it's a regressive tax, but I would certainly look at measures to start progressively seeking ways to get rid of plastic bags. So I would certainly want to look at how we do that.
Caprice Alves, I could not support at this time a bill to eliminate plastic bags, but I'm open to information and supportive of the environment, so.
Hey, Todd Stevens, my wife and I, we have 8 Home Depot bags at home costing us $2 each. I would rather they say I Love Harlem on them. Yes, I support to ban plastic bags, and if people want me to make 50,000 bags that say I Love Harlem on them, I'm happy to do so.
Please do it.
Hello, I'm Dawn Simmons. I agree with most of my colleagues here. I don't think that we should have the 5-cent tax. However, we do need to find ways of having other types of bags so that we can take care of the environment. So, thank you.
We're going to just jump back for a bit. We try to organize this so to get major things covered, but also not keep you here for an ungodly hour. But we have an important question that we feel we should be presented, since it's kind of so controversial, and here's how it goes. Okay, starting with some of the intro. 75% of Harlem's middle schoolers are failing, regardless of whether they attend chartered or regular public schools. Also, charter schools are often co-located in the existing facilities of regular public schools. However, there's a glaring difference in the resources provided to the charter as well as the quality of the spaces. Often the charter school is material and equipment that are lacking in the regular schools, and the charter space is often freshly painted and made to look more inviting. As a council representative, what would you do to ensure that there is equality in the provision of services as well as the environment of the regular public schools? And what could you do to enhance basically the passing level of middle schoolers in Harlem? Yeah, this is a 1 minute. Okay. This is a 1 minute. Yes or no? This is not yes or no.
No, it's not. 30 seconds. Could you please just repeat the question?
Okay, 75% of the Harlem middle schoolers, as we've been told, are failing, regardless of whether they attend charter or okay, sorry, I'm sorry. 75% of the Harlem's middle schoolers are failing, regardless of whether they attend charters or regular public schools. Additionally, charter schools are often co-located in the existing facilities of the regular public school. However, there's a glaring difference in the resources provided to the charter as well as the quality of the spaces. Often the charter schools has material and equipment that are lacking in the regular schools, and the charter spaces are often freshly painted and made more appealing. As a council representative, what would you do to ensure that there is equality in the provision of services as well as the environment of the regular public school, as well as raise the achievement level in both?
No, this is not yes or no. This is an answer.
No, this is not a yes.
No, this is not. Cordell Clear, first of all, I am against co-locations in our public school buildings. The charter movement began by saying they were going to improve education for our children with less. They were going to get their own places to do this, and they were going to share what they learned with the system so that we can improve education for everybody. This has not yet happened, and we're waiting for the magic bullet, because if there's something so good and so precious, it's criminal of the public school system to hold it back from the majority of our children. The other part that I want to respond to is that I look at a lot of the schools that are in Harlem and I compare them to schools in other parts of the city. And I just don't see anything other than charters, for the most part, being offered. Some things like dual language. We have so many children here from different ethnic backgrounds where dual language programs can be brought here, and our children can be prepared for the real world as it is growing and becoming global to learn other languages. A lot of the gifted programs are not in our community. You see them in other communities. Why is it that only charters are good enough for us? I don't dispute anybody's choice to choose, but give us some choices.
I echo the sentiments of my colleague, and we work together to stop co-locating schools, because what it is a form of segregation. It segregates our kids, and it puts one group of kids against another group of kids. We already have enough problems. Children, kids are animals, but children, our children. As a father of a 4-year-old, I wouldn't want my child to come in a school where it's segregated. However, we have to look at the math and sciences of what's going on all over the world, because our kids are not able to compete in a global economy with not being taught the math and sciences that they need. So I think that's something that we should definitely look at. I am totally against co-locating. I understand charter schools and public schools, but we definitely have to focus more on math and science for our children.
I'm against co-locating and pushing public schools out. A lot of times where we see now is that we have these complex school series where we have about 6 or 7 schools into one, where you have cramped spaces, not enough resources, and that those schools, which happen to be chartered, which are able to raise money in different avenues that public schools traditionally cannot, have some of the better spaces and some of the better equipment. So I do not support anything in terms of co-locating that pushes traditional public schools out. Second, I believe that we need to increase our efforts in terms of tutors and having more after-school programs and weekend programs available to our young people, so that they can get some of the catching up in tutoring and learning that they may need. Because throughout our district, we have failing school districts and we have failing schools. And one of the ways that we could correct that is to increase the tutorship, increase the days, not increase the days, but increase hours and opportunities where young people can have opportunity to learn.
I'm Dawn Simmons. This affects me personally. My daughter is in 6th grade and she is attending a charter school. The school she attends is in a separate building. However, from a scale of 1 to 10, it's still at a 6. When I was looking for other schools for her, everything was around 2 to 6 out of 10, and that's abominable. I actually am for traditional public schools. If we strengthen traditional public schools, we won't need charter schools, we won't need the other schools. However, since we don't have the funding or the resources, or people are just not budgeting their money the way it should be, right now, those are the things that I would work on, making sure that money is being budgeted properly, because some teachers don't even have copy paper. My daughter's school, which is a charter school, she doesn't even have books. So it's more than just a charter school, public school issue. It's a Harlem issue. Thank you.
I'm supportive of charter schools, but I'm not supportive of co-locations. And with respect to our public school system, I would look to places like South Korea or Finland and model our schools, initiate policies to model our schools behind those schools, because those schools are really high functioning. And why can't we function like those schools if they're working? So if there's somewhere, even across the world, where schools are functioning, then we can do that here as well. So I would look to those places as models, and I would ensure policies that reflect that.
So I'm a product of the public school system, and I would continue as a city councilwoman to advocate for strengthening resources for public school. This is a resource issue. I also agree with my colleagues about the co-location issue. Segregation in any form should not be tolerated, especially in this community. I also come to this as an educator. I've been a professor both at the community college level as well as at the private institutions, and I know that we have to close the achievement gap across the board, whether it's for our young pre-K through middle school, or we're talking about high school and colleges. And whatever I could do to reinforce that through the budget, allocating resources for quality education, that's what I would continue to do.
Marvin Holland, this is a really long, complicated issue for the Harlem community. Right now, over half of the students in middle school are now in a charter school. So this is what started out as an experiment is no longer experiment. It's here to stay whether we like it or not, and we need to deal with it, whoever the next council person is. Just a couple of other things on the issue. It's been 62 years since the Brown versus the Board of E, and we still have the most segregated school system here in New York City, anywhere in the country. So the issues are so great, as it's to the point now. I've been visiting public schools while I've been campaigning. At first it was charter schools pushing public schools out and co-locating. Now we have public schools pushing other public schools out. So the issues are grand, and this needs to be at the top of everyone's priority, and we need to really sit down and have a real adult conversation about education.
Thank you. I liked his answer in reference to charter schools. We can't just close them all down within 24 hours. So on the bad side, all these charter schools, they can receive, say, $5 million from government, and we can't walk into those schools and check out the classes and see what's going on in those classes. They can be obsessed with test scores, and the kids might not be able to write cursive or draw a circle. So, I mean, that's important to me. The other part that's important is 44,000 kids believed in it and wanted to attend a charter school last year, but could not. So that's how many kids want to attend a charter school. So, of course, we can't bleed our traditional public schools past $5 million over to a charter school and have that charter school not give any access to the school and not have any community voice on even the board of the school. So lots needs to be changed. I mean, we're all in agreement, no more co-location, and there's a lot more to go. Thank you.
I think the question, the heart of the question is about achievement of our youth. And as a past educator, I understand that very well. I think there's certain things we need to do. One of the things we're talking about is resources. The issue is not charter versus public school, it's resources and how those resources are allocated. We need to have complete transparency so we know what one school is getting compared to another school. Because what oftentimes happens is one school budget is packed on operation and very little for programming. And then you have another school in which 90% of that budget is packed for programming. You can't compare those same schools and expect those same kids to perform at the same level. So we need to have complete transparency. The second thing we need to do is an assessment. There's no reason that your city council person should not visit every single school in this district. And as your city council person, I'll make sure to visit every single school. Make sure what works, we model it throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you. You must have heard my speech before. I will visit every single school in the first 100 days. Number one. This is a critical issue for our community. And it is criminal that kids in our public schools do not have the same resources as kids upstate. On the first day of school this year, I organized a group of black men to stand in front of Harriet Tubman School in a cheerleading line and welcome every single kid to school. And I did that before I made the decision to run. Some people have been running for months. I've been running for about 3 weeks, okay? And do you know the smiles on the faces of those kids? Okay? and what that impacts. Some of the men who were there are sitting in the back of this room. And I saw their parents crying when we stood there and applauded them, okay? So I understand and I support parental choice. I have an issue with co-locations, a significant issue. Thank you, Jolinda. Thank you.
So on that, I just want to chime in for a minute on that point because it is very important, and I was on the school board for a number of years. The quality of education in most of the schools here in this district is horrible. It's still horrible, okay? So there are issues around the UFT, DC 37, and what goes on in our classrooms. The quality of education and the instruction is inferior and has been since 1960 when my mother decided not to send me to Harriet Tubman School, PS 154 on 127th Street, all right? That's how old this issue is. That's why our children are being tracked to prison. That's why we have to stop fighting charter schools versus public schools and start focusing on high-achieving schools. Whether it's a public school or a charter school or a private school, our children need to be educated. They need to be taught science, math. When our mayor talks about a 10-year, 2020, he's going to provide STEM instruction to our kids, is he kidding me? That needs to happen yesterday. We need to make that happen immediately. So what I would charge, charge all of you, any of you who win the city council seat, is to get in there and to fight hard. Don't just go and tout the union line. Fight for what will deliver high quality instruction to our kids, okay? Thank you. All right, so, thank you. How many people agree with that? Okay. Woo! Okay, make it happen, 2017, let's make it happen. So, what we like to, I don't have the energy, but thank you very much. They have the energy, God bless them. Okay, so what we like to do is to give each one of you 1 minute to summarize your vision for the community, what you hope to achieve. You can speak about whatever you want within your last minute presentation to the Harlem community.
Good evening, church. My name is,
Since you weren't here at the beginning, you can have 2 minutes, everyone else gets one.
okay, thank you. Good evening, church. Again, my name is Dawn Simmons. I have deep roots in Harlem. My great-grandmother came here back in the early 1900s, and she created a school on 126th Street. I work in finance. I've been in finance for over 20 years. However, I filed medical records, and I've been a social worker with the Brooklyn DA's office helping domestic violence victims as well as HIV-positive New Yorkers. I was actually a New York City school teacher in the Bronx and in Harlem. I really believe in educating children. I had a school in Ghana where we educated and empowered children in the village of Nkinkasu, as well as doing the same thing here, right here in Harlem, where I have an 11-year-old at a charter school, as I mentioned, right here in Harlem. I am running because, well, first of all, I'm not a politician. I have worked in finance pretty much all my life, aside from the social services. The reason why I'm running is because I've lived here all my life and I've seen it change. And in some ways it's changed for the better, but in some ways it's changed for the worse. And I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can to give everyone an equal opportunity, actually within their own community. A lot of people have been here for many years, but they've been left behind. I don't know what that's about, but I want to make sure that, I want to make sure that everybody gets that equal opportunity. As far as my vision, education is very important to me. As I mentioned, I have a daughter who's in a charter here, going to school in Harlem, but I just believe in education anyway. I'm big on education. Secondly, I want to ensure that we get good paying jobs here, not jobs where you're just making a little bit of money, but careers, bringing in tech jobs, bringing in hospitality, different types of jobs so that we can live in our own community and work within our own community, as well as people coming home from college and not having to go downtown or across the country. They should be able to work right here. We're in New York, right? So, and lastly, well, criminal justice reform and police community relations is very important to me as also, as we're seeing a lot of our young men going to prison by the truckloads, and that's a real issue. And actually, women are going to prison too. And lastly, of course, is the housing issue, because if we don't have a house, guess what? We can't be here anyway, so it won't make a difference. So, okay, thank you very much.
Well, good evening. My name's Todd Stevens again. I'm running for City Council, but for the first 30 seconds, I'd like to really thank everyone in this room for treating me with so much respect this evening and fairness. I think everybody has been treated with fairness in this room, and that's what Harlem's all about. So I thank you for that. And I really do mean that. So as far as my issues, I have safety, housing, education, beautification of parks. There's so many things on my mind. I've never been in politics. All of us are only going to have 1 year. It's like a 1 year test. You're going to be able to redecide if you're going to re-vote for us or not at the end of this year. So, you know, for me, I want you, when you walk outside and you wake up tomorrow morning, I don't want you to see a big glass structure in the middle of your block. I don't want you to see darkness just because a 20-story tower was built on the avenue next to you. I want you to feel like your kids are going to get the education they deserve. You're going to have job skills from high school, so when they graduate from high school, they're going to have a skill to get that job and have Harlem-based businesses here grow. We're going to double the businesses, and I just got my warning, so I'm going to make every effort I can to fight for everyone in this room, and I thank you, and please vote for me February 14th, Valentine's Day. Thank you.
My name's Caprice Alves, and I'm running because my personal experiences coupled with my community advocacy gave me the awareness of the root causes of things that plague this community and our citizens. So I believe that this community will be best served with competent leadership, forceful advocacy, unapologetic advocacy, and competence in the city council, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everybody for sitting through this. It was quite a long evening. My name is Marvin Holland, and if you don't take anything else away for those of you who are getting to know me, is that one thing no one's ever going to do, and that's outwork me. I put in the work, and that's how I got here. And as you heard tonight, there were a lot of issues discussed, issues of housing, issues of the school system, issues of education, et cetera, issues of quality of life. And the question is, who actually has a plan to tackle these issues? I think you've heard throughout the night in all of my answers that I had a clear path and a clear plan on all these issues. So once again, I want to thank you for coming out tonight, and just keep in mind, nobody's going to outwork me in this race, and nobody's going to work harder for you than I will. Thank you.
Thank you. I started the conversation this evening sharing with you my journey that I was raised in public housing by my grandmother, who also was a sharecropper. What I didn't share tonight was that I also grew up as a caregiver for a mentally ill mom and a father who passed of substance abuse after he could not find a job when he returned from the Korean War. And the pillars of my life were forever changed as a result of that. I am continuing to use my candidacy to be a bridge, to be a voice, to work in partnership at all levels of government. I have over 20 years experience, a master's in public policy. I've been not only started in government under Fernando Ferrer in the Bronx 20 years ago, but I full circle went into Congress. I worked at the state level. I also traveled to 11 cities as a director of public policy for the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS. I know health disparities. I will restore the pillars of a healthy community: affordable housing, employment, economic development and jobs, as well as mental health and health issues. You can be assured through my candidacy that I will continue to fight strong for you.
Once again, good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Cooper. I'm running to be your next city council person for District 9. First of all, I just want to say thank you all. I really mean it. To sit here and listen to what's important to you, and for me to digest it and take it back and share some of my ideas. So please give yourself a round of applause. Thank you. I'm running because I love this community. I care about this community. I have a Harlem-based engineering firm, but on my spare time, I serve as vice chair of the Community Board 9, in which we push the West Harlem Development Corporation that now gives millions of dollars to the community. I served as an auxiliary police officer because I realized my neighborhood wasn't safe. And instead of waiting and watching, it was important for me to get engaged. So I'm asking for your support. This is not something that I've gotten paid for. This is something I enjoy because I live in this community. I'm asking for your support to take it to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers of this event. Reverend Kilgore, thank you for hosting it and for your support and endorsement. And I'd just like to say one thing about Vision for Harlem. I'm running, first of all, it is an honor to be a part of this group. What you've heard tonight, you've heard different visions for Harlem. It takes a tremendous amount of work to grow up as a kid in Drew Hamilton and become where I am today, to be sitting here on this stage. If FDR had the New Deal and Lyndon Baines Johnson had the Great Society, I believe we can have a great imagination in Harlem. I think we can inspire kids on this block to join with kids in St. Nicholas houses and work together to rebuild this community together. That we have inspirational leadership in the city council that they can look up to that will never let them down. And I humbly ask for your support. I ask you to join me on Valentine's Day. Thank you for your time.
First, I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's been a long debate, and I know some might be feeling tired, but I thank you for staying awake and staying energized and engaged. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event and also my colleagues that's sitting in back of me. My goal and my dream for Harlem is a Harlem that is inclusive for everybody, where we protect those that have lived here, that have fought here, and that are the embodiment of the spirit and the integrity in which we seek to represent, but also which we seek to instill in our kids, while also expanding on the notion of what it means to be a Harlemite. Bringing good paying jobs. It's not enough to bring jobs to this district, but pay substandard wages. We want to bring jobs to this community that pay a fair and equitable wage so that we can stay in our homes and not be displaced. It's about making sure when developers come into our community, they invest into the community in which they're moving into, not just come in to break, distort, and disjoint the people that are already here. And lastly, it's about rebuilding our education system so that our education is the platform that allows our young people to aspire and dream to new heights. Thank you.
Again, my name is Troy Outlaw, and I want to thank all the organizers for having this event. I want you all to give yourselves a round of applause for sticking in with us and staying through this long process. I love Harlem. I want to thank my mother for giving birth to me to Harlem. I am Harlem, and Harlem is me. And I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. I've strived so hard. I worked in other communities all over the city for all members of the State Assembly, members of the City Council, members of the State Senate, members of the United States Congress. But Harlem is special. We had so many giants before us that we stand on. And I want to build on what they fought for this community. I want to continue to fight for this community. I want to continue to build in this community and work with all the small businesses, as well as make sure that we get a quality education for our children, and make sure that we provide services that are needed for our residents, as well as everyone in this community. Thank you.
My name is Cordell Clear. I was asked to run by the people of this community. I worked tirelessly for over 25 years for this community, side by side with many of you, block associations, tenant associations. I've worked with every single one of those groups in this neighborhood. I didn't do that for us to be pushed out and looked at as though we don't deserve to be here. We welcome the new. There are opportunities for new. But that hard work that started many, many years ago, because this didn't happen today, that hard work that started those many years ago was for a future for us and for our children. And we have to make sure that we're a part of the new Harlem as well. So I commit to you that upon electing me to the city council, that I will continue to fight to make sure that Harlem is here for all of us.
Everyone, I'd like to thank everyone who came this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates. I think this was a fabulous forum. I think we learned a lot. I'm sorry we didn't have time to ask more questions. I think that everyone can leave feeling comfortable that each one of these candidates is deeply interested and cares about our community. We're blessed to have such talent in our community, and hopefully those who are not elected will remain engaged because the struggle continues. Thank you very much.